And welcome to the now second annual release of Plainsong, something that I hope will continue for many years to come. And I wanted to just start by saying thank you to you for being here tonight. I know that April is busy, we have concerts to go to, we have all sorts of events this week. And on a slightly breezy night in North Dakota, you chose to be here with us tonight, and thank you for being here. I wanted to start with a little bit of history of the magazine for those that are unfamiliar. On the side table over here, I've brought a sampling of the issues that we have been publishing since 1987. So I teach in English, and so I don't do a lot of math, but I think that's somewhere around 37 years. And in the world of small liberal arts, universities and colleges and magazines, that's something to celebrate. And so take a few minutes before you leave and walk through sort of the aisle of history of Plainsong over here on your way out. But that kind of run and this kind of magazine also takes many hands and much support. And so before we start tonight, I simply want to say thank you to a lot of folks that are here in the room tonight. First of all, I just want to publicly recognize Dr. Paul Olson over here, the provost of UJ. And for both Dr. Olson and Dr. Redfern, I want to just publicly say thank you for your support of the arts. I hope that I don't ever annoy you by just walking into your offices and sitting down and saying, let's talk about Plainsong. But I want the rest of you to know that those sort of meetings are always well received, and the arts are alive and well at UJ. Theater, music, creative writing, and so thank you for your support of the arts. We also have in the house tonight the entire English department. That does not mean that you need to be careful when you speak, because we are off the clock tonight and we are not correcting grammar. But in the house tonight we have Dr. Sean Flory, the chair of the English department. We have Dr. Mark Brown and Dr. Danielle Clapham. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Someone else that I annoy quite frequently is in the room tonight as well. Donna Schmitz is here tonight as well. Donna Schmitz is in charge of PR and marketing, and her office is strangely warm year-round, including winter, but no matter when I need to pop in and ask a million questions about Plainsong, she always smiles, even when she has 14 million projects to do. And so Donna, I just wanted to say thank you to you tonight. Providing music tonight, Rick Wallentyne and John Clodfelter, thank you for being here, even with boot in tow and a busy week. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, one more thank you, and then we'll get started. But I just wanted to give a shout out to the Art Center, the second year that we've been in this space. Last year there was this lovely landscape painting over there, and this year it's bananas. I don't know, but enjoy the bananas before you leave tonight. But part of the mission of this magazine is to reach from campus to community and to connect those worlds. And so by hosting this event in a space like this, we get to enact those connections between UJ, between Jamestown and the surrounding community. And so I'm thrilled to be in this space. So here's the plan for tonight. We have 8 presenters and readers who will come and talk about their work and talk about how they envision the world and talk about how they see and write the world into their different poems or stories. I'll take turns introducing each of them, and hopefully most of us have a copy of the magazine, and you can follow along as we go. And so tonight, Scott Lloyd, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to start with you. Is that okay? So I have the pleasure of teaching with Scott Lloyd. Scott is an educator, an activist, a writer, and speech and debate coach from Gosnell, Arkansas. He teaches in the communication department at UJ, and he seeks to champion inclusivity, diversity, and understanding through his work. If you're curious, Scott has blogs, and you can find him online. You can also find him in our magazine. He currently resides in Jamestown with his partner Candy and his dog Ryan. And so Scott, please welcome Scott Boyd.
Thank you, Aaron. I am honored to be here tonight and honored to be published in Plainsong. I do a lot of writing, a lot of public face writing as far as activism and writing about current events and culture and a lot of the issues that we're facing in our nation. You might imagine that I have a few opinions being a debate coach, and my writing is an opportunity to share some of those. The story that I'm going to share with you tonight was my first adventure into fiction writing. In part, it is based on some of my experiences with my father. The names and the places are changed. It is also inspired by a passage of scripture in John chapter 14, where Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Another translation of that reads, "are many rooms." There's also a passage in Psalms that speaks of having your feet set in a very large room. And so the story is about a man by the name of Richard Bostwick. His father has passed away, and he has been estranged from his father for some time, and he has received word that his father has passed away and left him a house that he and his mother were residing in after Richard had left the home. And we're going to pick up the story on page 46, the second paragraph, if you'd like to follow along. I was purposely looking for the attic in hopes that something useful of my childhood may have survived. In our former home, I would often hide in the attic to escape my parents' fighting. I accessed the attic via the scuttle hole by pulling the string and unfolding the ladder. I climbed up into the attic and was filled with miscellaneous boxes, broken furniture, and scattered remnants of my childhood. That's when the collection of newspapers caught my eye. One of the few happy memories my father and I shared was a Sunday tradition that involves those newspapers. He would hide behind the news of the week and dutifully fill out his crossword puzzle. But the Sunday funnies were always mine to read. On occasion, time was well wasted pressing silly putty onto the contoured lines and comical expressions of Garfield, Snoopy, or Big Old Bailey, and then peeling it off to reveal a perfect imprint. The memory lives now under that stack of perfectly preserved newspapers. It was also where the black moleskin caught my attention. I would have laid it aside had I not come across the mysterious sketch of the floor plan. It intrigued me as each room had a randomly assigned number. There was a number 1 written in the attic, a number 2 in the upstairs bathroom, 3 in the master bedroom, 4 in the kitchen, and ended with 5 in the living room, perhaps a discarded remodel plan. Exiting the attic, I stepped into the upstairs bathroom. I stood at the sink, picking up the bar of Iris Spring soap to wash my hands. That scent always made me think of my father, even as I was reluctant to do so. As I lathered the bar in my hands, I was suddenly 5 years old again, standing on my toes to reach the sink. "Anything that is worth doing well," he would say as he took my hands and put them together with the soap and washed my hands between his. I recalled my father's touch, remembering the strength and gentleness of his hands, and for the first time, I felt my father's familiar presence lingering in this strange house. I stepped out of the bathroom and turned into the master bedroom. On the nightstand was the only family picture from my childhood. I was 10. Mom had purchased a ticket from a local church group for an Olin Mills portrait. I wore an orange sweater that made my neck itch. My father was in his blue suit with a wide red necktie, and Mom wore her lavender dress and yellow sunflowers. The picture was as awkward as the events that led to it. Mother had announced at dinner that we had to get dressed up and go to the church for the $10 package she had purchased, the First Baptist Church of Carthage. We only attended as a family on special occasions, and now apparently to have our picture taken. We were sitting in front of the television eating meatloaf, watching Peter Jennings, when Mom made this surprise announcement. "What the hell, woman?" my father exclaimed. Strangely, I don't remember that it was a huge fight, certainly not like those that came before it, and not like those that would follow. It was as if he acquiesced to Mother's desire in a strange dispensation of peace that was preceded by only one profanity. Strange the things I remember and what I choose to forget. I was the only one smiling in the picture. I put the picture down and walked out of the room. I headed back downstairs to the kitchen. The appliances were dated but seemed to be in working condition. I opened the refrigerator. A carton of eggs, a few Michelob beers, various condiments and sauces, and some leftover pizza populated the otherwise empty shelves. Seeing the beers prompted me to remember my first one. I was 12, and my parents had screamed at each other for hours. When the fighting subsided, I came downstairs. I opened the refrigerator, grabbed one of the many Michelob beers, and popped the top. It was bitter and heavy, a drink unlike any other I had tasted. I forced myself to finish it out of curiosity, if nothing else. The ensuing buzz was more imagined than real, but I strangely felt older, even though I was still several months shy of a whisker. Afterwards, I returned to my bedroom, determined that my first beer wouldn't be my last. The next morning, I was awakened by my father's booming voice. "The next time you decide to steal one of my beers, you'd better leave me $1 to cover my loss, punk-ass kid." Apparently, he had always known exactly how many beers he had on hand. The thought shocked me back into reality. My father was dead. My mother was dead. Only I remained. I walked out of the kitchen and slumped down into my father's favorite chair. It was the only piece of surviving furniture from our previous home now present in this new one. It was the chair where he died. His lawyer golfing buddy had found him there when he didn't make his tea time. The chair was worn, still holding the shape of my father's torso. I turned on the lamp beside his chair. I sat there remembering many dark moments in a new light. My father carefully tended to the particulars of his life, absent mother and absent me. He managed a life ordered by the mundane and still found a way to enjoy golf on Saturdays, crosswords on Sundays, and by the care exhibited in the minutia of his last moments, deliver a key to his estranged prodigal son. My father's intentionality made this strange home into a familiar space. My ambivalence suddenly and violently turned to grief. I wept for the first time in years. A torrent of remorse opened up like a fire hose. "Daddy!" I screamed. "I hate you!" "No, Daddy, I love you." Confused bellows of grief gave way to the clarity of love. This man wasn't my father, distant, removed, and dead. He was my daddy, present and alive in this house, in my heart. Eventually, the tears relented, and I attempted to compose myself by reclining in the chair. As I reflected on the unreconciled years and the long journey I had just made in only a few steps, it occurred to me that I had unintentionally followed the path of the numbers randomly assigned to the rooms in the strange black moleskin I found in the corner of the attic. Was it the power of suggestion, or had my father ordered my steps from the grave? When was the moleskin placed there? Who placed it there? As I sat there staring at the lifeless television screen, I thought about what must have occupied my father's thoughts in those last moments. He missed me. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Starting this fall, Plainsong and the English department are excited to offer a number of different scholarships for incoming English majors and English ed majors. And we have the first recipient of one of those scholarships with us here tonight. Our second reader tonight is Tegan Palmer. She's lived in Alaska for most of her life, but in 2023 she moved to North Dakota. She'll be joining the UJ family this fall, majoring in English. She lives with her mom and her younger brother. She has written over 120 poems and has been writing poetry since 2016. Tegan?
So, hi, my name is Tegan, as was just said, and tonight I'm going to be reading one of the poems I have written. As said, I've written over 120 poems, and for me, poetry isn't just writing, it's how I express emotions. I can't always identify how I feel and figure out why I do that, so I write. Many of my poetry is about how I feel, and I write, and then I read through it, and I figure out why. I've written stories, I've written emotions, and tonight I'm reading you on page 74 and 75, if you'd like to follow along, a poem I wrote in about 2021. I wrote this poem whenever my mental health was horrible, and I wrote to help myself. And this is one of the poems I wrote. It's called Butterflies. Have you ever thought of drawing butterflies, drawing them on your arms, your legs, your sides? Perhaps you should. I never once thought of butterflies, never thought of what they could do, what they could be, but now I know. They are wonderful. I wanted to throw myself from a great height. I wanted to fly before I died. I wanted to hurt, but I never hurt enough alone. Then I was told of butterflies. I was given a pen and told to draw butterflies all over myself, to draw them on my thighs, my waist, my arms. I hesitated. After all, what is the point? Why would I care about some bug? But I did it. I took that pen and drew butterflies all over my body. Then I was told to name them, to name every butterfly after someone I cared for, to name them after friends, family, pets. It was silly and made no sense, but I already had the butterflies, so why not? I named them. I wrote the names of friends, of my family and my pets. I named every one of those butterflies after someone special. Then I was told why. Think of the butterflies as an extension of what they are named after. And if you hurt before they fade, you killed the butterfly. And not just one butterfly, you killed them all. If you hurt, they die. Please, draw butterflies, draw them all over your body. Use pen, marker, paint, draw butterflies, using all colors of the world on your skin, but don't use silver. Don't hurt. Because no matter what anyone ever says, no matter what your reflection thinks, you matter. Maybe not to them, but you matter to someone. You may think that you don't, but you do. If not to your family, then to your friends. If not to them, then to your pets. You matter, no matter what you think, no matter what anyone ever says, you do matter. I'm begging, don't hurt, don't suffer, don't hate yourself, don't die. Please, draw a butterfly.
Thank you, Tegan. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years of having you at UJ and hearing more of your poetry. Thank you. One of my favorite roles in this position is to take from August till May and to receive all of the different emails that come in. And every once in a while, an email will come in that just blows my socks off. And our next reader is one of those emails. I remember sitting at my dining room table and the photograph came in, and confession time. I am not a photographer, but I maybe understand enough to know when the shot is just perfect. And when Troy's work came in, I knew, yes, we are publishing Troy's work, no matter what the rest of my department says. But Troy Gunderson is the executive director of Youth for Christ here in Jamestown. He enjoys nature photography as a hobby and has a particular fondness of unusual celestial phenomenon. You just said that to make me say that tonight, didn't you? Okay. He is not afraid to stay up late or to brave the cold to get the shot. He also enjoys helping others learn about the hobby. Would you please help me welcome Troy Gunderson?
Thank you, Plainsong and the staff, for the opportunity. Appreciate it. My interest in photography is probably born out of my interest in youth ministry, taking lots of trips to beautiful places with youth for camping trips and excursions, like going out to the Badlands or the Rocky Mountains and trying to take pictures of those beautiful places and to remember what I saw. It made me seek out some better equipment and better lenses and things so that I could bring those memories back, and slowly became self-taught and just got better and better at it as I went along. As he said, I primarily have stuck to landscape photography. You won't find me taking pictures at weddings and those kinds of things. I like being out in nature and taking pictures of landscapes and sky phenomena and things like that. I just recently was in Illinois for taking pictures of the eclipse, and that was really fun. One of the first things that I want people to know about my photography is that I am a committed plagiarist. And I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but the pictures that I take are not created by me, they are created by God. So the photography, I always tell people, if you like what I take pictures of, don't thank me, thank God. But I suppose if there is credit to receive from my photography, it might be in the fact that I am the kind of guy that will get up late at night to go take pictures of northern lights, or get up really early in the morning to 20 below zero to take pictures of sundogs or the rising moon. I was recently talking to somebody in Minnesota, and they said, we don't really see a lot of sundogs in Minnesota. And of course, we know that that's not true. Most northern states will have those kind of sundogs, but it's the lack of the trees around North Dakota that allow us to see those horizontal type of events much more often than a lot of other places. And so I really appreciate that about North Dakota. A lot of people say that the skies are so big here, and it is true. Sundogs are very similar to rainbows. My picture's on page 44, by the way, in the book. Sundogs are very similar to rainbows, as they are both created by refracted light, but of course rainbows are refracted by rain droplets, which are round and they receive light very, very readily. Sundogs are created by flat octagonal crystals that kind of float down or float around in the air like a leaf falling from a tree. And when the light hits the edge of those crystals, it refracts back at 22 degrees. That's why we see sundogs so bright on the edges of the sun at 22 degrees. And then the rainbow shape over the top are also refracted, but they're kind of wobbling, and they're not as quite lined up with our eye as the ones that are more horizontally with the sun. And so it's much brighter in that degree. Besides going out at odd times to get pictures like this, I enjoy using these kind of phenomenon like rainbow, or like moons and northern lights and sundogs as backlighting. I really enjoy backlighting, and so I'm often going out looking for things to introduce a subject like I did in the picture on page 44, just to give it a little more interest and give it some depth. So I'm usually driving around and pointing out lone trees to my wife, or things like a windmill on the horizon, or one of the old prairie dinosaur kind of equipment we see sometimes. So those are the kind of things that I enjoy the most, and I plan to keep on doing it. Thank you very much.
not me, one day said, write all the time and write everything. Because otherwise the moment will come when you are reading something and you realize that someone else has put your thoughts in words, and you will realize that's what I've been trying to say for the last 10, 20 years. Our next poet is a poet that has done that for me. I'm pleased to welcome Casey Daigle here tonight. Casey Daigle is a full-time mobile phlebotomist, a poet, and a casual historian. She enjoys writing poetry to be read out loud, creating a story with poetry, and utilizing modern genre tropes within her poems. She spends a lot of time driving and cursing the fact that she can't write while driving, because that's when all the best ideas seem to appear and, of course, also disappear. Would you please help me welcome Casey Daigle?
Thank you all for having me. So I've lived in North Dakota for about 12 years now. Oh, a lot closer to the mic, okay. Thank you for all having me. I've lived in North Dakota for about 12 years now. And I've only been able to visit Maine once or twice. Once was an accident, was an emergency, and the second time was to visit family. And that first time visiting back, my family aren't flyers. We'll drive from here to Maine each time. And that first time back, I really expected, this feeling of, wow, I'm home again. Everything's so very familiar, and I'm back. But it was strange. And I think a lot of times when we see monsters in fiction and that transformation from humanity to what is a monster, you end up, it's describing the part of the journey in which you return and you've been fundamentally changed. And that change is something that can be positive, something that can be beautiful, but it's strange to reach home and realize that you don't quite fit in as the same way that you had before. I'll be reading my work, De Bride. It's on page 30. The blue sky blooms wide over me, myself in torn open deer hide, as blood red stains me elbows high, and the doe's fly speck still eyes dully shine their dry message that her death mirrors mine. Selfish or selfless, it's muddled to become selfless, in that the self is ground to red paste in the dappled light of copper-scented days, and with each one I awake with a new face to find myself in the wood, as a killer, a sinner, a badge of horror to shed my skin for more. Perhaps I'd have no problem in the find, if I'd ever really tried, but the seeking seems to make my belly yellow and wide, turn tail, run away, get away, hide. And now, armpit deep in deer insides, wearing her guts as garters, holding her heart up to next to mine, I seek and I might find that which is gone from me, but in others seems to so easily reside. Here, thumbs through foreign lungs, her dead flesh flinches, shows me shades of a smile. I offer limp-bodied apologies and lame excuses, for even in all the violence I have yet to find its uses. And, as always, I'm left with nothing while she stands, wobbly like a fawn and runs just far enough to feel safe, even if it's never far enough, could never be far enough. In her eyes, she knows we are still hungry, still hunting, still alive after all. Thank you.
If we were handing out prizes for most publications in Plainsong, that award might go to Stephanie Juritsma. It is always a pleasure to see Stephanie's poetry come in on email, and it's always a pleasure to have her here to read as well. Stephanie is a writer and a performer and artist who's currently living in Bismarck. She graduated from the University of Jamestown in 2022 with a degree in English/writing and theater. She's been writing for various publications for the last 6 years, and in her free time, she enjoys traveling, playing music, and spending time with family and friends. Please help me welcome Stephanie Juritsma.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank the University of Jamestown and the Plainsong editorial board for inviting me out to speak tonight. I'm excited and honored to be able to do so, and it's always great to be back in Jamestown. I wrote 2 poems that were published in this year's publication, but tonight, in the interest of time, I'll be talking about one of them. The poem is titled Threads, and it's on page 24 if you want to follow along. I'll read it and then just talk a little bit about it. Threads. I love that beauty reminds you of me, the spaces I live in your memory, like held breath in velvet and silken scraps, and delicate fraying threads holding together garments, seams you never had the heart to rip out and fix, the ones made for you to hold, gently. You remember the way you held me when I was just a little pattern piece, fragile, half translucent in your hands. And you remember the little things, the first button I found on the ground, the excitement of new elastic. You remember the things that were ours, the fabric dye we spent weeks choosing, forgotten too long while we watched the sky out the attic window. You remember the painful, growing things, my finger pricks and frustration tears, the times your sure hands took over and my stitches became more even as I copied you. You remember the uncertain things, hours and hours in front of bolts of fabric, trying on lives like I had forever to choose. And you remember the things of history, stories weaved between the threads we'd sew, and memories you'd never be able to tell me about, when you ran out of words and we watched the sky instead. You remember wordless things, like this little dress wrapped in tissue with a note and a bow, the one I gave you when I was young, even though I wanted to wear it, with its mismatched pieces and fraying thread and the button I found at the park one day. It reminds you, and you hold it, gently. I spend a lot of time sewing now. I guess I finally found the patience. I weave my threads across evenings and time, and I long to be there with you, back in my childhood home, by the attic window, dropping stitches as we watch the sun set. To tell you a little bit about it, I had an unusual chance last year to go abroad for a little while. I've always dreamed of traveling, so I took the opportunity, but it meant spending several months pretty far away from everybody I knew. And I'm someone who often wonders what people will think when I leave their little sphere, what effect I've had on their world, if any. And traveling gave me a chance to experience a sort of microcosm of this idea. And I did my best to keep in contact with the people I would talk to normally if I was here. But there are some things you just can't approximate over a distance. I was about a month and a half into my stay in Ireland, and I got a text from my father with a picture of a sunset and telling me that he wished I was there so that we could watch it together. From there came the first line of the poem. I love that beauty reminds you of me, and the rest just followed in a bout of love and homesickness. The sewing imagery, to speak to that briefly, is both concrete and metaphorical. The concrete side is I come from a family with a history of sewing. My dad's mom was a professional seamstress, and in the last year I've begun very faltering attempts to learn to sew myself. but it's also metaphorical about assembling a life through all these little memories growing up and assembling myself. In conclusion, a final note, I kept the you in here purposefully vague. I wanted people to be able to read it and put into it the person who has been there for them, what that experience was for them. But with that in mind, for tonight, I would like to dedicate this poem to my dad, who watches sunsets with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. When the art of Megan Wall landed in my inbox, I remember disconnecting my laptop from my monitors and running down the hallway to Dr. Clapham's office and spinning my laptop around and pointing to it and dancing and saying, look what we get to publish this year. And so I'm super excited to see the work of Megan Wall in this issue. Megan is a mom to 2 boys and a professional photographer specializing in family portraits. In her spare time, she enjoys stitching on old photographs. Please help me welcome Megan Wall.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I just want to say first, all of you are like such amazing speakers. I'm an artist, but I am not a public speaker at all, so just bear with me while I read a little bit about myself and tell you about my art. My name is Megan Wall, and I created the piece titled Blooming in this year's issue of Plainsong. It's on page 39, I believe. Blooming is a black and white photograph that I stitched using mainly rayon embroidery threads, which is silk type of threads. The technique it's also called dimensional 3D embroidery, so it sticks up off of the photograph. I graduated from college in Moorhead for graphic design and ended up working at a local needlework shop called Nordic Needle. While working here, I sold and shipped all kinds of needlework, tatting, cross-stitching, needle painting, and of course, Brazilian embroidery. Before working at Nordic Needle, I had no knowledge of needlework, but I was specifically drawn to Brazilian embroidery because of the beautiful, girly, floral arrangements that appeared 3D. I decided that I wanted to learn how to stitch using this technique, and over the course of several months, I taught myself with the help of some coworkers' books and YouTube how to do Brazilian embroidery. I started stitching with kits, which includes the pattern, threads, needles, and fabric. The kits made the process much easier and less overwhelming because everything I needed was included. After completing and gifting many of these kits, I took a break, which led me to stitching on black and white photographs mainly. So another thing about me is I like to collect things, like a lot of different things, but the main thing I like to collect is black and white photographs with like the stinky ones that you find in like a basement that you have to soak in baking soda for weeks to get the scent out of. And I get most of them from garbage sales, estate sales, flea markets. So one day I was just going through these old photos and I decided that I should just try and stitch some colorful threads on them. I was kind of bored with the kits and I don't know what it was, but I decided I should try. So once I started, I was addicted to bringing color and personality to the photos. Many of the photographs, the subjects have an almost emotionless expression because the old black and white photos, they kind of have the serious face. So it was fun to create a new story just by using a needle and thread. Before starting the stitching process, I stare at the photo and just visualize in my head what I want to do. Then I typically just start freehanding everything. Sometimes if I stitch like an animal on like someone's face or like something a little more goofy, I'll use a pencil outline and then trace it that way. So then I'll erase the pencil outline, but the toughest thing about stitching on photographs is they're very fragile because they're paper and I don't like use a backing, I just go right on the paper. So a lot of the times I have a big idea and then I start stitching and I have to stop because I start ripping the photograph and I've had to throw some away because of that, but that's just part of the process. So for me, it's rewarding and satisfying to take an old and sometimes smelly photograph that would likely end up in the garbage and turn it into a new, colorful story. So yeah, I just want to thank Plainsong and UJ again for asking me to share a little bit about myself. Like, this is just a hobby I've been doing since I had kids, and it's just cool I get to talk about it for a minute. So thanks, everybody.
I met Keith Norman a couple years ago, and I've been hounding him ever since to send me something. And I was super thrilled to see a story come in from Keith this year. Keith has made his home in Jamestown since 1982, pursuing a wide variety of vocations, searching for what fuels his passion. In 2004, he began producing more than 20 books of fiction and nonfiction, as well as short stories and historic essays. Please help me welcome Keith Norman.
And thank you very much for keeping to remind me. I'm forgetful at times, I guess, about opportunities like this. And thanks to the University of Jamestown for doing this. It's a great project. A bit north of Jamestown, within 10 miles of Jamestown, north on Highway 20, is an Audubon Society wildlife refuge that I like to go hiking on. And tucked away, out of sight from any road or trail, is the rubble of several stone buildings and fences from a century-old farmstead or homestead. Now, time has scattered those stones, and to make any accurate estimate of the original structures is impossible. And that's where a writer's imagination comes into play. In my mind, part of the rubble was the efforts of a widowed homesteader who worked long days with the help of a failing horse to build something of importance to her. And in this story, in the excerpt I'm reading, which is I think on page about 19, we see her as she stands inside the rectangular stone structure that she has just built. This is actually the conclusion of the story. At her feet were the 3 crosses the wind and roving livestock and wildlife had knocked down. She set up the one on the farthest left and used the shovel to pound it in a little deeper into the earth. "Oh, Mary," she said, addressing her daughter's grave. At the right-hand grave, she set up the cross of William, said a prayer for her only son. The cross in the middle was the crudest of the 3 made by Sally's own hands after her husband died. She didn't pound it into the soil for fear it would break. Instead, she leaned it against the new stone wall, then stepped back and wept. All 3 had been taken by the grip that spring, first Mary, then William. Her husband had been coughing when he made William's cross, and her husband died 3 days later. She'd done the best she could, but knew the grave was shallow and the cross was crude. Sally sat with her back against the stone wall through the afternoon. The prayers and the tears alternated for the family that had been taken from her. She went to the shanty at sunset, packed together a burlap bag of the things she owned. It amounted to a few clothes and some cooking utensils. She didn't know what would be useful when she moved to Jamestown. In July, her sister and her husband had come out to visit. She'd told Sally she'd get a job at the Gladstone Hotel, cleaning rooms or waiting tables. Sally told her she had a couple of things to do before she moved to town. She rose at dawn of her final morning at the shanty. The horse was nowhere to be seen, but she planned on turning it loose anyway. She hoped it would survive, but doubted it would make it through the upcoming winter. She walked a last time to the rock wall and gazed at the crosses. The rocks would protect them from the wind and livestock that had knocked them down previously. Then she thought of one last thing. She grabbed a shovel and leaned against the shanty wall, strode up the hill behind the homestead. There, not in bloom, but still recognizable from their leaves, grew wild daisies. Her husband had treated the wildflowers on the hill as his personal garden and brought her blooms for the shanty at the end of every spring day. Now she dug up 3 of the plants, digging deep to get as much root as possible. She carried them to the graves. She dug the daisies in as best she could and then left the shovel. Sally crawled over the stone wall one last time, picked up her burlap bag. She'd done the best she could to protect everything that she loved. For those of you that are interested, I can give you directions to that field of stone. It's really only a couple hundred feet off of where you can park a vehicle. You can't see it from where you would park the vehicle, but it's there. You just have to know which hill to walk around. The rubble is interesting, and the area does have a variety of wildflowers. With different flowers blooming at different times in the year, and I imagine crocuses are probably either in bloom now or will be shortly. And you can take a look at that and let your imagination tell a story about the stones that are found there. Thank you to the University of Jamestown and this guy.
In the literary world of North Dakota, there are a few names that have achieved legendary status, and Waiwodi is one of those names. And so when the poetry of Laurel Waiwodi came in my inbox, I felt like we had been given a precious gift. And so it's with great pleasure that we are able to publish the poetry of Laurel Waiwodi this year. Laurel grew up on a small farm in western North Dakota. She has published a novel titled Past Darkness and has a collaboration of stories with Bryce Berg titled Pages Between Ages. She finds time for writing between working at the library, playing disc golf with her husband, and reading multiple books at once. Please help me welcome Laurel Waiwodi.
So I have a confession to make. While I've always liked reading, I have not always liked poetry. I like to say that Robert Frost was really what changed my mind. He is one of my favorite poets. But I have come to realize that poetry, both reading it and writing it, you can have a great catharsis, or you can realize that you have a shared experience, sort of realizing that we have, like as humans, we have a lot in common, even though we are all different and unique as well. I also feel like something that's helped me write poetry is reading all the poetry of others. So I'm going to read 2 poems tonight, and the first one is actually by Paul Laurence Dunbar, and it is called We Wear the Mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks, it shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise, we wear the mask. And now for something completely different, to quote Monty Python. This is a poem I wrote called Disc Golf. The urge to throw our discs is back, it never went away. But winter canceled all our plans and made us only stay inside. But now that snow is gone and warmer breezes blow, it's time to take our discs outside. Remember how to throw? We will remember how in time, before the summer's heat, our muscles gaining back their snap remembering the beat. The timing hardest to bring back, but when we get it right, the rewards will be so sweet, watching discs in flight. So let us go and play disc golf before another night. The itch inside my hand declares, you know the time is right. Thank you.
So before we conclude tonight, I want to say thank you to a few other folks in the room tonight. At the side table over here, we have the year's current issue, but also that is where Rachel Rorick and Kirsten Vanderkoy are seated. And I want to just say thank you for your work and your vision and your insight that you have given us on loan, I guess, for this magazine. Rachel has been with Plainsong for 2 years, and Kirsten, this is her first year. It's been a privilege to work with you both. Can you please help me thank Rachel and Kirsten? Lastly, it's a joy to work with Caitlin's K. Crumb craze at the back. I've practiced saying that a few times. And so on your way out, please enjoy her baking. She's my favorite baker in Jamestown. Pick up a business card as you're thinking about Mother's Day, as you're thinking about graduation plans. Enjoy her work. There are magazines on the right-hand side or left-hand side of the room. And may I recommend that you go home with at least one autograph. So find an author, find an artist, and take home a signed copy. Thank you all for being here, and have a lovely night.